Hey, this is Coach Reeves. Today I'm going to talk to you about solving quadratic equations by factoring. Alright, I'm going to do a couple of examples, a couple of problems that are not on the worksheet, but I want to make sure you understand what's going on. Okay? Alright, if I give you an equation that looks like this, okay, no matter what, we're always going to see if we can take out a greatest common factor. In this case, my greatest common factor is a variable. It's an x. So we're going to factor out the x. We're going to divide by x, divide by x. This is going to reduce to x minus 4 equals 0. Now when we're solving by factoring, you're going to take each factor and put it equal to 0, or set it equal to 0 to find your solutions. In this case, I'm going to ask you to take this factor. This is a factor, even though it's a greatest common factor. You're going to put this equal to 0, and then you're going to set this parentheses equal to 0. And then we want to solve for x, meaning we would like to get x by itself. In this situation, x is already by itself, so 0 is one of my solutions. Here, I would move the 4 to the other side by adding 4. This would cancel. X equals 4. We have solved for x. We have gotten x by itself. So in this case, I have two solutions. One of them is 0. One of them is 4. This is how you would write your answer. Do not put it in parentheses. If you put it in parentheses, this becomes an ordered pair, and then it's a location on the graph. Okay? So you're going to factor, and then you're going to put each factor, set it equal to 0. Let's try another one. In this problem, it is not equal to 0. If it's not equal to 0, then we need to move things to make it equal to 0. But we would love to keep our a term positive. You want to keep your x squared or y squared, whatever it is, you want to keep your a term positive if possible. It makes it so much more easier when we work these, okay? So here I would ask you to move the 8y to this side so it would create a 0 or equal to 0. We're going to go plus 8y plus 8y. This will cancel. That will give me the 0 that I'm looking for. I would have 2y squared plus 8y. In this case, I would ask you to factor out your greatest common factor. The number 2 goes into both of my terms. They both have a y in common, so I would use my smallest exponent, and that would be my greatest common factor. I would divide by 2y. I would divide by 2y. This would reduce. The 2's would cancel, and the y squared over y would reduce to a y. Plus 8 divided by 2 is 4. The y's would cancel, so I could close my parentheses, and equals to 0. Then, just like in the previous problem, I'm going to ask you to set each factor equal to 0. I would ask you to put, I would ask you to put the 2y equal to 0 and the y plus 4 equal to 0. We need to get y by itself. So I'm going to ask you, hang on. I'm going to ask you to divide by 2, and y equals 0. Minus 4, y equals a negative 4. Those are my two solutions. Okay? So remember, if it's equal to 0, that's how you want to start. If it's not equal to 0, you're going to move something and then get it equal to 0 or set it equal to 0. And then you're allowed to start factoring. Okay? All right. let's go to your worksheet and work some problems. All right, so now we have a trinomial. We're going to factor our trinomial. So we're going to go to two parentheses. I'm going to ask you to look at the back sign. The back sign is a plus sign. Remember how we factored? If this is a positive or a plus 72, that means my signs will be the same. And in this case, they're both going to be pluses. We will break down the x squared as x times x. And then we will look at the positive 72. Since it's a positive 72, we're going to add our factors that add up to 17. So we're looking at 1 times 72, 2 times 36, 3 times 24. There's a bunch of them. Do you remember what we said we could use to where we could list all of these factors? If you have a graphing calculator, you can go home and you can do this. You can say in the graph mode, you can say y equals 72 divided by x. You're going to hit enter. You're not going to see anything on the graph. But what we do want to do is hit Control T for table. And when you see your table, it's going to list all these factors. And you're going to continue. You'll see something like 4 times 18. 5 will not work. You'll see 6 times 12. And then you're going to see 8 times 9. 8 times 9 is 72. But when you add them, what is 8 plus 9? 8 plus 9 is 17. Those are the numbers you would want. We're going to put an 8 here. We're going to put a 9 here. It does not matter where you put them, remember? But now that we have factored, we're going to ask you to put each factor equal to 0. Set it equal to 0. I would jump in and I would say x plus 8 equals 0. X plus 9 equals 0. We need to solve for x. We need to get x by itself, so we're going to move the 8 minus 8 minus 8. X equals a negative 8. We're going to move the 9 minus 9 minus 9. X equals a negative 9. My two solutions are negative 8 and negative 9. Let's do another one. Hopefully you recognize what this is. This is one of our special cases. Okay? This has only 2 terms. It only has 2 terms and it has a minus sign. Remember, when we see minus in math, we think of the word difference. So this is the difference of 2 what? Is it 2 squares or 2 cubes? Well, this gives it away. This could be squares because this is a perfect square and this is a perfect square. This is an example of the difference of 2 squares. So we're going to go to 2 parentheses. We're going to look at this back sign. The back sign is a minus sign. It's the only sign, so it's got to be the back sign. But it's a negative or a minus sign. That means my signs have to be different. One has got to be positive and one has to be negative. We break down the r squared as r times r. We break down the 36 as 6 times 6. This is the difference of 2 squares. And this equals 0. Now I set each factor equal to 0. R plus 6 equals 0. R minus 6 equals 0. I move the 6 to the other side. Minus 6 minus 6. R equals a negative 6. Move the negative 6 to the other side. Plus 6 plus 6. R equals a positive 6. My two solutions are negative 6 and a positive 6. Let's keep going. Uh-oh, look at all this stuff. Remember what we said on one of those practice problems before we got started. If there's not an equal to a 0, if there's not a 0 in the equation, then we move things to where we get a 0. I want my squared term, my a value, to be positive. So I'm going to move this to the other side. I'm going to move this way over here. I'm going to go plus 3p squared plus 3p squared. This will disappear. This will cancel. But look what happens here. 3p squared minus 2p squared. That gives me a positive 1p squared. Then I'm going to move the 11p. I'm going to move the 11p over here also. I'm going to say minus 11p. I'm going to go minus 11p. 13 minus 11 is going to give me a positive 2p. This cancels. All I'm left with is a minus 35, but these canceling will leave me a 0. Now I'm happy because now we're equal to 0. Now it's like our normal problem. We're ready to factor. This is not going to be bad because my a value is that invisible 1. So this is the kind of the problems we like to factor. We're going to look at the back sign. The back sign is a negative, which tells me my signs will be different. So when we set up our two parentheses, this tells us my signs are going to be different. And then we move forward and we're going to find out that the bigger number is going to be positive. So when we get ready to find our numbers to put in the parentheses, the bigger number has to be with the plus sign. How are we going to break down p squared? Well, we're going to break down p squared as p times p. That's pretty simple. But then we look at the negative 35. Since that is a minus 35 or a negative 35, that tells me that I am going to find my middle term by subtracting. So let's go find our factors. I've got 1 times 35. 2 doesn't work. 3 doesn't work. 4 doesn't work. 5 does work. 5 times 7. 5 times 7 is 35. But when we subtract them, what is 7 minus 5? 7 minus 5 is 2. Now, do we want to go 5 minus 7? Do we want the negative with the 7? If you put the negative with the 7, what will I equal? That's going to equal a negative 2. Is that what we want? No. We want the negative with the 5. That's what we said. The bigger number needs to be a positive or a plus. So we're going to put the 7 with the plus sign. We're going to put the 5 with the minus sign. Equals 0. Don't forget your equals 0. Now we're going to put each factor equal to 0. P plus 7 equals 0. P minus 5 equals 0. We're going to move the 7 to the other side. Minus 7 minus 7. P equals a negative 7. Move the negative 5. We're going to go plus 5 plus 5. P equals a positive 5. My two solutions are negative 7 and a positive 5. Let's try one more problem. Just like the problem we got through working, we do not have a 0. The equation doesn't say equals 0, so we have to move some stuff. Who do we want to move? Well, here's the thing. Some people would say, hey, there's only 2 things here. That's only 2 things. Let's move the ones that only have 2 terms. Let's take the easy way out. But I'm telling you right now, you want to move this to the other side. You want your squared term, you want your a value, which is this -4, you want that to be positive. It makes it so much easier. You have to trust me on this. So we're going to move, I'm going to ask you to move this 4x to the other side. We're going to move it way out in front. Because we're going to do the opposite. We're going to say plus 4x squared. Way over here in front. Plus 4x squared. This is going to cancel. Now we're going to move my 8x. We're going to move this. We're going to move this over here to the 16. We're going to say the opposite. We're going to say plus 8x. Plus 8x. This will give me, I'm going to bring this down. This gives me a 4x squared. A -16 and a positive 8 will give me a -8x. Over here, this cancels. That's the whole purpose. We're moving it. I'm going to move the 5 over here. We're going to go plus 5, plus 5. This cancels. It's gone. But look what happens over here. -5 plus 5, those cancel also. But what do I have over here? All of this stuff canceled. So what am I going to write? I'm going to write 0. Look at this problem. This looks very, very similar to the second example that I did. That second problem right before we started the worksheet, this is what it looks like. We're going to see if we have a greatest common factor. Is there a number that goes into both of these? Yes. We're going to say the number 4 goes into both of these. Is there a variable? Is there a variable in common? Yes, they have an x in common. There's my greatest common factor of 4x. So we'll divide by 4x. We're going to divide by 4x. The 4's are going to cancel. We're going to reduce x squared over x. That's going to leave me with an x. Minus 8 divided by 4 is 2. The x's cancel, so we'll close the parentheses. It equals to 0. We're going to put each of these equal to 0. We're going to say that 4x equals 0. We're going to say x minus 2 equals 0. We're going to divide by 4, and we're going to find out that x equals 0. Let me give you a hint. Anytime that you factor out a variable as your greatest common factor, you're going to end up with a 0 as one of your solutions. Anytime that you factor out a variable as your greatest common factor, you will end up with a 0 as one of your solutions. Move this. We're going to say plus 2 plus 2. That will equal x equals 2. My two solutions are 0, 2. Okay? So here's what we need to understand. When you get an equation, if it's not equal to 0, move things so it does equal 0. But when you move your terms, you want to make sure that your a value, the number in front of your squared, your variable squared, like x squared or y squared or whatever it is, you need that number to be positive. Okay? It just makes life so much easier for you. Okay? I'm hoping these 6 problems that I worked will help you. If you get stuck in solving by factoring, please don't hesitate to email or ask us or stop in on a Zoom or something like that to see if we can help you. All right? Hey, well, good luck.